So welcome to this improvements video on SIPOC mapping. So the aim of this session is to provide an overview of a SIPOC mapping and when you would actually utilize it during an improvements project. So what is a SIPOC and what does it stand for? So SIPOC is an acronym for suppliers, inputs, processes, outputs and customers. And as you can see from the visual, each of these 5 elements is contained within its own lane, with the process steps laying centrally. Start by asking yourself for the steps to be successful. What needs to come out? What do these critical outputs look like? And also what needs to actually go into this process step for it to occur successfully? The inputs will feed the process steps in much like the suppliers feed the inputs, and also then how the outputs will supply and feed the customers. Ask yourself what needs to go in to make all of these steps actually a successful step. And you'll basically want to map this out and balance it out as the process unfolds. So you start to analyze and look, okay, so what needs to go into this step? What needs to come out? And then as the steps move on, how does this feed moving forward? So what are the outputs? When do they become inputs to the next step? Next, you want to move and apply the same principle to the suppliers and the inputs and the customers and the outputs. So what we've actually managed to create for you is a little example on our next page, because we recognise that it's probably a little bit confusing at the moment about what this might look like. So this slide provides you with an example of a very simple SIPOC map following the process of a patient entering A&E with a suspected fracture following a fall. So as you can see, the process steps along the central talk about patient arrived in A&E, patient booked in, triage occurs, assessment happened, and X, Y, and Z. It's by no means a comprehensive map, as there's going to be plenty of other elements that have came in, but what we wanted to do is give you a good idea, a visual, as you can see, how that this would actually look as it's being created. So with the patient arriving in A&E, we'll take the first step for an example. You're going to need some of the inputs there. We're going to be a receptionist, a computer itself. Some of the key outputs to that would be patient symptoms captured, as well as the patient details as like name, date of birth, things like that. And as you can see, looking at the visual too, the supplier to that particular input might have been an ambulance, if the patient was brought in via ambulance, and the customer in this particular case is the patient. So you'll see that they were going to stay quite consistent in the customer line moving forward. The more specific you can be on the process, the better. In this example, we've assumed the patient was brought in via ambulance, but you could imagine this as a walking scenario. How might those things look a little bit differently if the patient had walked in on their own and other than being supplied to us by an ambulance? The whole idea is that this provides a very big visual, comprehensive understanding of everything that's going in and coming out of a process for it to actually work correctly. And what you generally tend to find is that you can start to see that there's things missing, and this is why processes aren't working correctly. So one benefit of the SIPOC is its ability to identify something that we call critical outputs and critical inputs. And these are the things that basically are essential for that process step to occur. It needs to have all these things identified, otherwise we're not really fully mapping out the full potential of the process here. It works on the principle of controlled inputs leading to controlled outputs as well, or the term like we've just mentioned, chaos in going out. So as you can imagine, if you don't have things there that are controlling something coming in, how can we expect to get something out on time? So simple example for that might be making sure that we finish patient procedures on time and we're not overrunning. So if an output can't be controlled, then it's basically works on the principle that we're going to have a little chance of maintaining a stable process, because things that aren't controlled basically become chaotic. So next, once we've started to analyse the inputs and the outputs, we want to apply the same principles to the suppliers and to the customers. Because it might be that you notice that the supplier issues are causing problems. So for example, pieces of equipment that are never there on time, which means that procedures happen to be cancelled, the patient might have arrived, every single other person might have been there, but something that was essential that we were waiting for to be sent, via Amazon, for example, or via the delivery service hasn't got here, then that can be equally as important as why things are cancelled. So basically it wants to have a look at how do these suppliers impact on how the overall process transpires, and how might we need to change them as we go, especially if we identify issues. And then we'll also look at the same thing with the customers. We also want to identify who these customers are, because sometimes we can be a little bit guilty of just thinking about the patient. However, it might be that other departments are a customer as well. So thinking about the discharge process, it's highly likely that things like pharmacy are going to need to be included as part of one of the customers of the process. So it helps you to also start to see why and where things are actually kicking off within the process, so as you can see why there's bottlenecks and delays happening. So like many of the tools, there's a couple of key principles that you really need to stick to make sure that you get this correct. The first one is limiting the process analysis on the process steps to no more than 7 steps, especially drawing that central line. And I think that makes perfect sense in a way of it will make the map too busy, and it's probably branching off into looking at other things other than just key elements of a process that you need to understand more. So no more than 7 process steps, and also they want to be quite high level process steps, like what is it? Is it a patient that's being admitted to the wards, or is it another thing? Keep it and be specific. Keep the overall perspective on the process. Try not to delve into too much detail, because this is more of a macro tool to look at it from a macro level other than going right into the micro level. Identify the needed inputs and suppliers to each of the inputs as you go. It might be that you need multiple roles and teams in there to do that, because it might be that you don't see all of the inputs that go into it because you're in that role that would ever end up needing them. Specify the quality outputs for each step as well as the customers and the suppliers for each of these outputs. So it's basically saying just try to be as thorough as you can be, and make sure that when you're looking at things, it's in a systematic, logical way, and as you're starting to see how things develop as they go. So this slide looks at all the different multiple uses that SIPOC could have during a project. First one it being is just an excellent planning tool all round to help capture all of the included elements that you're going to need. So whether that's other interdepartmental working, roles, key elements to systems and inputs and outputs that are why processes are failing. So straight away it's an extremely useful tool just for the inclusion element. It will help to track the critical outputs, where you can start to ask yourself, do we have inputs that control these? It helps you to see what outputs become future inputs as well as how the process unfolds. It helps identify supplier and customer inclusion or lack of, which can also be a problem. And it helps to track all of the subtle interactions like the system use, data, access rights, and all the other intricate, smaller detail things that you might have missed around a process as into what it takes for it to happen. It's also excellent for designing new processes from scratch. So when you think about brand new systems, this is where it comes into its element on its own. So if there's any questions that anyone has in relation to SIPOC mapping, please reach out to the Leadership and Improvement team on the email address, and we'll be happy to support you through any more of questions that you have throughout your learning journey. So also enclosed is some information regarding other programs available. Some of them are looking at different quality improvement courses and different leadership courses. Some of them are half days, some of them go all through to full days, and it's the variety of that's there really. It's up to you, I think, on maybe about identifying which ones you need next. So many of the courses as well, we have CP accredited, and we're also looking at getting more of them accredited in the near future. We're going to keep you updated on anything else that we have via marketing from Strive. Please do get in contact if you need us following this training. Thank you very much.